Hello everyone, this is Logan59XP here, and today we are here to give my long overdue response to Sony's infamous decision. It's been nearly a month since Sony announced the end of physical media on PlayStation starting in January 2028, and I have not said anything about it so far. I've been tempted a couple of times over the last few weeks to do it, but I just didn't really feel like it. I would try to record it, and then I would stop halfway through because I wasn't satisfied with what I was doing, and then I would redo it over and over again, and I still wouldn't be satisfied. So here we are with another attempt, and obviously if this one sees the light of day, that means I was happy with it. So hopefully this one sticks, but we'll see. But yeah, so this is a topic that I know I need to talk about. This is too big of a deal for me to not comment on, but at the same time, it's already been talked about plenty. Everyone else has already said their piece on this. I really have nothing all that new or original to add to the conversation overall, but I still want to talk about it because it's still a big deal, and it does affect my plans for the future of PlayStation for me going forward. So let's go ahead and talk about it. I'm not going to redo the entire spiel about everything that's happened because everyone knows at this point. January 2028. They're going to do reprints for older games for some time, but newer games, January 2028 is the end. And that's pretty much all there needs to be said about it. So, how do I feel about it, personally? Because that's really what this is about. This is about what do I feel about it for something this monumental. Well, here's the first thing I can say. The first thing about this announcement that was very odd to me was the fact that Sony was the one to announce it first. Now, for years, people have speculated on Microsoft going all digital because we had the FTC leaks from years ago that had the what was the adorably all digital Xbox Series S, or sorry, Series X. The Series S is already digital, but the adorably all digital Series X that was going to be like cylinder shaped instead of rectangle like it is right now, right? And that never happened, admittedly. And Phil Spencer, even at the time, said, "Hey, this is old stuff. This does not represent our current plans." And obviously, that mid-gen refresh never ended up happening. We did end up getting a digital-only Series X, but it never replaced the original, right? You can still buy to this day the standard 1 terabyte black Series X, which is the one that I have, of course, the standard one. But there is a white one out there that's like that doesn't have a disk drive, and then there is also that Galaxy one that's 2 terabytes that does have a disk drive. So those are the current ones they have at the moment, from what I remember. But anyways, Microsoft, they've been moving away from physical media for a while, right? Their whole focus has been on Game Pass, which is, of course, a digital platform. A lot of their first-party games have not been on the disc for a long time now. So a lot of people just expected that, the next console, which is now Xbox Helix, at least for now, that we all expected Helix to not have a disc drive. I didn't expect it for it to have a disc drive either. Maybe something for back compat, but new games, nah, I figured Series X was the end. And to be honest, I was kind of okay with that. Because for me, Xbox is mostly a Game Pass machine these days. I haven't really bought a new game on Xbox in a long time. I've gotten some used games, like I have Forza Horizon 3 and Titanfall 1 on disc that I've gotten over the past few years, but that's only because you can't get them digitally anymore, because they were delisted because of licensing and various other things. But in terms of new game releases, I don't really buy anything on Xbox, physical or digital. It's mostly, again, a Game Pass machine. And for first-party games like Halo and Forza, that's pretty much its entire purpose, right? If I buy a game, it's on PlayStation, pretty much. Because I don't really buy third-party games anywhere else. I don't buy third-party games on Switch or Switch 2. You're right, the Switch and Switch 2 for me is a Nintendo machine more than anything. So third-party games, no matter how well they run, I don't really buy them. And I don't really play on PC at the moment, so I'm not really buying anything on Steam or anything like that. Although I do still go in and redeem stuff on like Amazon Prime, and I still redeem, the Epic, free games every once in a while when I see something I'm interested in. So I still have a growing digital library on Epic and Steam and GOG and stuff like that. I have a bunch of stuff on Epic and GOG that I wouldn't otherwise have if they weren't given away on Amazon. But as far as buying games, if I buy a game now, whether it's physical or digital, and it's a third-party thing, it's on PlayStation, right? So if Xbox was going to ditch the disc drive, honestly, well, that would have sucked. Don't get me wrong. It wouldn't have been the end of the world, because the Series X is already mostly a digital device for me anyway, outside of a couple of legacy games. But PlayStation's different. PlayStation's different because because PlayStation, like it is for a lot of other people, is my primary third-party games console, right? Again, Xbox is for Game Pass and for Halo and Forza, and then the Nintendo consoles are for the Nintendo games. But for third parties, multiplayer, single player, whatever, big, small, it's PlayStation, pretty much. And I do have a physical library on PlayStation. It's not the biggest, because I didn't get into PlayStation until 2019. I didn't grow up with PlayStation the same way a lot of other people did. It was the last of the big three consoles I got into. Obviously, I've been with Nintendo my whole life. It's one of the reasons why Nintendo is such a big thing for me and why they're such a core, fundamental part of who I am as a person, for better or worse. Trust me when I say it's not all sunshine and rainbows having Nintendo be a core part of you as a person. It can be annoying sometimes, but it is a core part of me, and I wouldn't be who I am without them. So for me, of course, I got all the Nintendo consoles, and I'm going to buy Nintendo consoles no matter what, basically, because I got to be able to play those games. Xbox I got into later on. I grew up with Xbox at my cousin's house because they had a 360. They had a bunch of old games, and we got their old 360 when they got the 360 Slim. And then eventually we got really into the 360 in like 2012, 2013. And we played a lot of, GTA 5 and Minecraft and Black Ops 2 and whatnot. And that was like the golden age of, Xbox Live for me, my brother, and whatnot. And those were some great times, absolutely. But, obviously I grew up with Nintendo and it's a core fundamental building block of me as a person. Xbox is something I've always been close to, even if it's not the most important thing in the world for me. But PlayStation I got into in 2019. Well, okay, I had a PlayStation TV, for those of you that remember that thing, in 2016 for a brief period of time. I never really bought much for it. The first proper PlayStation I got into was the PS4, specifically a PS4 Pro, in 2019. So, because of that, I don't have any franchises that I can't live without, right? Nintendo has a lot of franchises I can't live without. Even Xbox has some franchises that I would very much like to still be able to play, right? I like Halo, I like Forza, I want to be able to play those games, so... But of course, with Microsoft nowadays, you can play on PC, so even if Helix really is digital only like we all think it's going to, and even if that really did matter for me, PC is always there. And yes, PC is digital only, but of course PC is more open and all that stuff, so it's a little different. But PlayStation is different because I didn't get into PlayStation until 2019, so it doesn't have any kind of long-standing legacy for me like the other two do, especially Nintendo. And it doesn't have any franchises on it that I can't live without that are only on that platform. I didn't grow up with Jak and Daxter. I didn't grow up with Uncharted. I didn't grow up with Ratchet and Clank. I didn't grow up with any of the staple, any of the staple PlayStation franchises, God of War, etc. I also didn't really get into any of the newer ones like The Last of Us or Horizon or anything like that. Even though I know, Gravity Rush. That's a smaller one, but I know there's a lot of people that like Gravity Rush. Like for me, the only PlayStation franchise that's not even really their own franchise is like, the Insomniac Spider-Man stuff. I like that, right? Played Spider-Man 1 on PS4, played Spider-Man Miles Morales and 2 on PS5. Even though I'm not going to get it at launch, I will be getting Wolverine eventually, of course. And that game will be a disc release, thankfully. Along with God of War. God of War Lofi is another one that's confirmed to be a disc release. I'm not interested in God of War Lofi, but that game is going to be getting a disc release, thankfully, so that's good for those that are interested in that. But yeah, PlayStation doesn't have any kind of locked-in essential franchises for me like Nintendo or Xbox, so that makes the prospect of a PlayStation 6 without a disc drive less appealing. It just does, because it's like, okay, it's digital only, but it has other stuff that I can't live without, so... But that's not the case. That's not the case with PlayStation, at least for me. again, I'm speaking for myself. Maybe for you guys, it's different. Maybe for some of you guys grew up with PlayStation, you grew up with certain franchises, and you're too invested in the platform. You've bought too many games. Whatever the reason, it's like no matter what, even if I don't like this decision, I'm gonna get the PS6. And obviously, if that's the case, that's perfectly fine. Let me make something crystal clear right now. If you're gonna buy a PlayStation 6, that's fine. If you are a digital only gamer, that's fine. You are not the scum of the earth. I'm only bringing that up because I know that there are people out there online because of this whole thing that's like, if you buy a PlayStation 6, then you're sending a message to Sony that that's like, no. It's not that deep. It's not that deep. It's not that deep. People are buying something because they get something out of it that they can't get somewhere else. Right? And that's the case for a lot of people with Sony. It's either it's their main platform, it's the one that all their friends are on, although that doesn't matter as much in this cross-play era, but still. They have a big library. Like, there are a lot of very real, legitimate reasons to why someone will buy a PlayStation 6. And obviously, if you're someone that is primarily a digital-only person anyway, then this news doesn't fundamentally change anything for you. And for you, it's just business as usual. But if you're someone that has a big physical library, which admittedly I don't. I have about probably 9 or 10 physical games on PlayStation, all things considered. I have God of War 2018, Trials Rising, Persona 5, Royal on both PS4 and PS5. So that's right. I have 3 versions of Persona 5. I have Persona 5 Strikers. I have Metaphor. I have Reload. And I have all of the Final Fantasy 7s. So I have Remake Part 1 on PS5. That's Intergrade. Not the PS4. The PS5 version with Intergrade, the UV DLC. Crisis Core Reunion, and Rebirth. And of course, when Revelation comes out, which is most likely getting a disc release, although we'll get to that in a sec, that will of course also be on the shelf. So I'll have the full trilogy set plus Crisis Core on disc, and that'll be pretty nice to have. But that's about it, right? And really the only games on that shelf that really matter that much to me. Oh, I also have Red Dead 2. I have Red Dead 2 physically on PS4. But that's about it. That's really not that many. I have much more Xbox games and, of course, way more Nintendo games than that. And really the only ones on there where I really care about the physical releases are Persona and Final Fantasy. The other ones could be digital versions and I wouldn't really care that much. But I definitely care about having physical Persona and physical Final Fantasy. I know that, right? Persona 4 Revival, I'm going to get that on disc. Persona 6, assuming it comes out next year, I'll be getting on disc. And FF7 Revelation I'll be getting on disc. And that's another reason why I think this news hasn't really hit me as much as it has for other people, because all of the upcoming games that I care about that I would be buying on PlayStation are all games that are going to get a disc release, right? Like, I know for some people they're worried about Intergalactic, because Intergalactic might not come out in 2027, so it might not get a disc release. And there's also the God of War original trilogy remakes that are probably going to be 2028, and therefore they're not going to get a disc release. But for me, the only upcoming games I'd be buying on PlayStation 5 are going to be Revelation and the 2 Personas. And those first 2 are definitely going to get disc releases. Now, Persona 6 will probably get a disc release, because it's going to probably come out in like October, September 2027. But we'll see. It's obviously too early to know. But Revival is already confirmed to get a disc release. And Revelation is almost certainly going to get a disc release. In fact, let's just go ahead and get this out of the way. I was going to mention it later, but since we're already talking about this, we may as well bring this up. Because actually, just recently, someone asked the FF7 re-trilogy director, Hamaguchi, about whether or not it's going to get a disc release, because for some reason that needs to be asked, even though it's coming out like a year before the deadline, so why wouldn't it be? At least that's what I would have said. But what he said is slightly concerning. Only slightly, but still. So here's what he said, to be exact. We're still having internal discussions on what the exact SKU product lineup is going to be for Revelation. So I can't say anything particularly definitive at this point in time, but I am working to make the arrangements to allow us to have some kind of physical edition. That sounds way more vague than it should. That really should be like way more like I'm surprised that this isn't just, yeah, of course we are. Like, Remake on both PS4 and PS5 had a disc release where the game was fully on the disc. Well, the Yuffie DLC wasn't, but the actual main game was on the disc. And then Rebirth was fully on the disc. It got 2 discs even. They promoted that fact in marketing. 2-disc release. They did the same thing for Part 1. Why would Part 3 be any different? Why wouldn't Revelation also be a 2-disc release on PS5? That seems like obvious, but the way he's making it makes it sound like there's a chance that we won't get one. I think we're still going to, and he himself says that he wants that to still happen, as we'll get into in a second. But the fact that it's not like a definitive, oh yeah, of course, yes, it will be getting a disc. The fact that it's not just an automatic yes is concerning, because it should be an automatic yes. The fact that it's not automatic yes is honestly really surprising, but anyways. Another comment that he mentioned is this. I do feel as a developer and as a fan that the general trend is for things to shift away from physical towards downloadable games. But that's obviously talking about the trend. Personally, here at something like FanFest or at community events for games that I've worked on, I really think that people bring up things asking for autographs, and I think that's lovely. I think it's a wonderful culture, and it would be a shame to lose that. I want that to remain. So that's less specific about physical games in particular, but I think it reiterates the point he made before where he's made it clear he wants a physical release. But the fact that it's not just an obvious no-duh set-in-stone thing is really baffling to me. Like, how is this not just, oh yeah, of course it is. Surely they had already planned for that, right? When they announced this, it's not like this game was announced after they announced it, right? Like, they announced Revelation at Summer Games Fest a month before they made the disc, a month before Sony made their announcement. So surely, even though pre-orders weren't available at that time, and they still aren't, surely they had already settled on, of course it's getting a disc release. I don't know why this is even a question. Like, okay, yes, it's coming out on multi-platform, which the previous 2 games didn't. It's coming out multi-platform on day 1. And that's cool and all. And maybe that's a part of it, because obviously the Switch 2 version is going to be a game key card. But that's not really surprising, because the previous 2 games were game key cards. And even then, they were never going to fit. I'm sorry, it was never going to fit on a proper cart release, right? There's a bunch of other game key card games that have no business being game key cards. One of the few third-party games where I think a game key card is acceptable is the FF7 games. And that's because the FF7 games are huge. They're like 100 gigs plus on PS5. You're not going to cram that on a 64 gig cartridge. I'm sorry. I'm just being honest here. I'm just saying, right? I want it to be a proper cart release too. If I was buying these games on the Switch 2, I would want them to be cart releases as well. But they were never going to be cart releases because they were never going to fit on the cartridge. Whereas they will fit on a PS5 disc because the PS5 uses 4K Blu-ray and that's 100 gig discs. So 200 gig discs will do the trick. That's what we got for Rebirth. That's what we're going to most likely get for Revelation. But we don't know yet. The fact that it's not definitive is a little concerning. Also, one last thing that Hamaguchi said. Maybe you'll have a box with a code inside it, or maybe key cards like Nintendo's doing, or a boot disc or something. I feel like there will always be something, and I hope there will be. This is in response to, like, he believes that physical games will not actually go away even after this happens, and that's what he's bringing up, right? And obviously, all the things he's mentioned are stuff that's already happened, right? We've seen code-in-a-box stuff happen, both on the Switch and, of course, even on PS5 for certain games, including one particular game we'll get to in a bit. Obviously, the game key cards have been a thing for third-party games on the Switch, too. Not all of them, but certainly a good amount of them. Or when he says boot disc, I'm pretty sure when he says boot disc, he's referring to, like, the Call of Duty type stuff, where it's like 100 megs on the disc and you have to download the rest of it. I'm sure that's what he means when he says boot disc, but yeah, I don't know. The fact that this isn't just a locked-in thing is honestly really baffling. The fact that we have to hope that it gets a disc release, is, like, kind of baffling, but let's hope that this is just us being worried about nothing, and that in a couple months when they announce pre-orders, they'll be like, hey, here's the PS5 disc version. It's 2 discs like Rebirth, and we're all worried for nothing. Because if it is not a disc release, if it's a code in a box or 100 megs on the disc or something like that, then Ooh, that's gonna be really annoying because I want the full set. I have the other games on the shelf. I want the full trilogy on disc. It's gonna really suck if that doesn't happen, but that's me being presumptuous. It'll probably all work out fine. I'm just being overly worried because of the way he's wording this thing on this interview. Anyways, going back to the rest of the discussion. So yeah, I don't have that many disc games on PS5, and PlayStation doesn't have any locked-in IPs for me, so a PS6 being digital only is kind of like, it's both simultaneously not the biggest deal ever, but it also just makes the console less appealing, right? Because just because I got into PlayStation late doesn't mean I don't care about getting disc games for it. I do. I mean, I just talked about how I really, really hope Revelation gets a proper disc release, because I want a disc release for that game. I want the whole trilogy on the shelf. I want Persona 4 Revival on disc. I want Persona 6 on disc. Right? I fully intend to get all those games on disc. Maybe not on day one. For like the Persona games, I might not get on day one, admittedly, because they're going to be on Game Pass. But FF7 Revelation is going to be a day one buy almost certainly. But I want all those games on disc at some point. I know that. So, I guess let's get to the main bit here that I'm kind of stumbling towards, but not quite getting to. Am I going to get a PS6? Let's just get that. Let's just answer the question. A big elephant in the room. Is this news going to make me not buy a PS6? My answer is, at least at first, probably not. But the thing is, the main reason for that is just because of the price tag. If it's really going to be $1,000 or close to $1, then that immediately kills it, regardless of the disk drive. So I'm going to be waiting for prices to go down, if they ever do, anyway. I'll be running my PS5 for probably at least a few years into the generation, no matter what anyway, just because of the price of the PS6. Especially if I still need to hold on to the PS5 for backwards compatibility, because that's another thing that we don't know, right? We don't know about whether or not we're going to have backwards even like a disk drive for backwards compatibility. Because at least Microsoft, even though it's not announced yet, there's been rumors of a disc-to-digital program they have in the works. So they at least have some kind of way going forward for you to be able to play your disc Xbox One and Series games, at least, on Helix, even if it doesn't have a disc drive. But Sony doesn't have that, at least not as of right now. But of course, it's still early days for PS6 stuff, so we'll have to wait and see how that all pans out. But I don't know, man. PlayStation doesn't have enough franchises to where I'm going to get it no matter what. And I do care about getting games like Persona, Final Fantasy on disc, so I don't know. In this specific moment, in July of 2026, over a year before the cutoff happens and long before the PS6 happens, my gut is going to say, no, I'm not going to get a PS6, at least for the first few years. But again, that's mainly because of the price, more so than the disc drive. But it certainly doesn't help. It certainly doesn't help. It certainly does not help. However, I am not going to write off the possibility of getting a PS6 if the price improves, or there is a game that comes out on it that I really want to play that I can't get on the PS5. I'm not really sure what that would be, but maybe there'd be a game that's only on it. Although, again, it kind of feels like the end of an era, right? You know, like, I was going to get a PS5 no matter what, because it's going to have the FF7 Part 2 and Part 3, and it's going to have Persona 6, but now that those games are multi-platform, it's kind of like, I don't even need the PS5 for those anymore. Let alone a PS6. So, yeah. I intend to keep buying PS5 games, right? I'm not one of those people that's going to stop buying games entirely or anything like that. No, I'm not doing that. Again, I'm going to get FF7 Revelation on disc. I'm going to get the Personas on disc. You know, there's also some older games on PS4, PS5 I want to get at some point that I'll probably get on disc. But, yeah, it's not looking good for the PS6, I'll say that. But again, I think that's mostly because of the pricing, more so than the disc drive. But there's my answer. There's my answer to the, Am I going to get a PS? Like, does this mean I'm not going to get a PS6? I'm going to say it doesn't probably affect it as much as it would other people. It definitely is a factor. It's definitely a factor. I'm definitely much less interested in the PS6 if it doesn't have a disc drive, but it doesn't kill it for me 100%. The real killer is going to be the price tag, so yeah. So, now that I've kind of made my perspective clear on all that, let's go ahead and go over a couple other things in regards to this whole thing. Now, one of the big driving factors, depending on who you ask, about this whole ordeal is, of course, GTA 6, because right before Sony announced this whole thing, Rockstar announced that GTA 6 would be getting a code-in-a-box release on PS5, and presumably on Series X as well. And as you can imagine, that went over about as poorly as you would expect. And people have been wondering, is the reason why Rockstar made this game digital only because of the Sony announcement? I don't think it is, because the timeline for that doesn't add up. If the game was coming out in November of 2027, sure, I would probably agree with you on that. It's so close to the cutoff date that, yeah, I would probably agree there's no point making physical media. Even though they totally should, but like I can understand from their perspective why they wouldn't want to do it. But it's November of 2026. And no, they're not delaying it. It's obvious that it really is coming out in November at this point. So, in my opinion, there's absolutely no reason, especially for a game of this magnitude, to not make disc versions for it. So why aren't they then? Why isn't Rockstar making a disc version, at least at first, of GTA 6? Well, my original reason, if you had asked me in late June, before the Sony announcement, but after the Rockstar announcement, my answer would have been probably because of leaks. They probably just want to prevent people from being able to play the game a week early. I don't think that's a good reason. Let me make that clear. I do not think that's a good reason, but that's the reason that they would probably give. And you know what? I think that's a dumb reason to not have one, in my opinion. But fine. After the Sony announcement, though, I'm starting to think, I don't know. I don't think the Sony announcement really matters, but just the general way that things have changed, I don't know. It feels like I'm not so certain about that leak argument anymore. Now, if I'm being honest, I kind of lean more towards the, like, it's digital only because it's GTA 6. What are you going to do, not play it? I kind of can't help but lean towards that kind of angle with it. I mean, it could be both. I think in practice, it's probably both. It's probably a combination of, we know you're going to buy this game anyway, and wanting to prevent leaks. It's probably both of those things. Now, how much of a percentage the difference is up to you, but it's probably a combination of both. Not helped by the fact that there is that $100 edition that has actual important stuff behind it. Not like the usual, oh, here's a couple of gun skins or whatever. Like actual real stuff in the game that's behind it. That's a whole other controversy that I'm not really all that interested in. But still, that also does not help the situation. So, yeah, I don't think the GTA 6 thing necessarily has anything to do with the Sony thing, but it certainly looks suspicious. I'll say this. It certainly looks like Rockstar was given the head up by Sony. I don't think that's actually... I mean, to be clear, I think they were told about it, obviously. It's Rockstar. I'm sure they were told about it. It's one of Sony's biggest partners, but I don't think the reason why it's a code in a box is because of the leaks. Sorry, it is because of the digital cutoff thing. I don't think it's because of that. I think it's more so leaks, and you're going to buy this game no matter what anyway, and we get more money from getting it digitally. I'm not someone that likes to be all doom and gloom. I think there's way too much doom and gloom out there when it comes to gaming and tech stuff nowadays. Like, it feels like every channel now is like infested with doom and gloom when it comes to gaming and tech stuff now. And honestly, it's kind of annoying. But even then, I can't help but not fall into the camp of, I'm sure it's at least partially because they get more money out of it, and what are you gonna do, not play it? Even I can't avoid that kind of eventuality, at least as being part of the reason. Again, I don't think it's all of the reason, but I think it's part of it. Now, here's one thing that I think would have made that whole situation better. If Rockstar said, hey, at launch it's going to be a code in a box, but we're going to have a physical version later, then they could get people to double dip. They could get people to buy it digitally at launch, and then they could get people to buy the physical version later, but they didn't do that. Because I've seen people say, oh, well, they wouldn't do that because then people would wait. No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't. At least most people wouldn't. I don't think they would. GTA 6 is too big of a game where I think GTA 6 is one of those rare games where a not insubstantial amount of people would double dip on the same platform. Like, not just, oh, they'll buy it on PS5 and they'll buy it on PC. No. They'll buy the digital version for $80 or $100 on PS5, and then, like, 6 months later when the disc version comes out, they'll buy it again. I genuinely think there is enough people out there that would do that they should do that, and it sounds like they're not going to, because there were rumors of there being a disc release in December or early January, but Rockstar kind of shot that down. So it sounds like there's not going to be any physical version ever, because it's obviously not going to get a physical release on the inevitable PS6 version, because there's not going to be physical on that. So, I mean, maybe the Series X version, but I think the Series X version is also a download code. I don't think it's a disc either. So it certainly sounds like GTA 6 is going to be digital only, period, dot, the end. And that really sucks. And as for what that means for me with GTA 6, I mean, I like GTA. I played a ton of GTA 5 back in the day on the 360 especially, but again, I didn't grow up with GTA. And also, GTA is not a series I've actively played in a while. Like, I haven't played GTA 5 on a regular basis in many years. So, well, obviously, I'm going to play GTA 6 at some point. I'm probably not going to get it at launch, especially because Ocarina of Time is going to launch around the same time, and that's a more important game for me, and that game's going to be a proper physical release. So, yeah. I mean, before the digital thing, I probably would have gotten it on day one, but now I think I'm just going to wait. If it's going to be digital only anyway, and there's never going to be a physical version, I may as well just wait for it to get cheaper, even if it's not that much cheaper, even if it's $60 instead of $80, I don't know. We'll see how long it takes, but I don't know. GTA 6 is a game I'm going to play. I'm going to get it at some point, but I'm probably not going to get it at launch. And not having a physical version definitely contributes to that. It's not the only reason, but it's definitely a factor. So, there's my stance on the whole GTA 6 thing of it all. So, I guess that kind of leaves us to kind of the last main thing, which is, yes, there's been a lot of backlash. More than usual. People are more passionate about this than they have been about most previous gaming controversies that generally flare up for a few days, maybe a week, and then people move on. This is one that people have not moved on. This is one that I think people are like, when people meme on the whole hold the line, everyone hold the line, and then people don't actually hold the line. This is one where I feel like people are actually going to hold the line, or at least enough people hold the line that it might actually result in some change. Now, as I mentioned earlier, signs aren't great on the Sony side, at least as of right now. Now, obviously, it's still a long time until this all pans out in January. They still have a long time to backtrack on this. We'll see. Obviously, I very much hope they backtrack. I very much want physical media to continue on not just PlayStation 5, but of course I want the PS6 to have a disc drive and get actual disc games. I want all of that. I want physical media to exist for as long as humanly possible. Across the board, whether that's gaming or movies or TV shows, or music. I want that to exist for as long as it can. I mean, hey, if vinyl can still exist in 2026, why can't we have Blu-rays on a PlayStation 6? I say no reason, no matter what the sales data says. And yes, digital is higher than physical. No one's denying that, but I still think physical is a big enough market, even on PlayStation. Even though it's not quite the 50-50 that it is on, say, Nintendo. Nintendo is like a 45-55. I'm not quite sure what the PlayStation split is, and I know that people don't trust Sony's numbers anyway. But whatever the number is, whether it's 80-20 or 90-10 or 70-30 or whatever, it's still big enough that they absolutely should offer it. This is absolutely positively the wrong move. And this is, by the way, easily the biggest controversy that Sony has had the generation. I know this has been a controversial generation for Sony with the studio shutdowns and Concord and the live service push and all that stuff. This is the biggest one. This trumps all of the previous ones combined. I think it's pretty safe to say. This is bigger than all those previous ones from Sony or Microsoft or Nintendo for that matter. At least I feel that that's the case. I mean, when you see the mainstream news sites talk about the end of physical games, that's how you know it's big. That's how you know it's not just the usual gaming angst and discourse. And don't get me wrong, that's definitely a part of it. I do feel like it's more. I do feel like it's more still. So, do I think that all this is going to make any difference? Do I think that in a couple months or in a year, Sony will say, okay, guys, we heard you. We're not going to do it anymore. Or at the very least, we won't do it on PS5. Right? Like maybe the PS6 still doesn't have a disc drive. Or at least doesn't have one for new games. But we'll at least continue to make games on PS4 and PS5 physically. And we'll have a backwards compatibility thing. Even a half step like that. Which, to be clear, people would not accept. It's been pretty clear. People want, including myself, we want a complete reversal. Right? Just Sony coming out and saying, okay, our bad, and we just go back to like everything is normal. But here's the thing. While I do think there is a chance, there is absolutely a chance that they can reverse course, I don't think they're going to. I personally, I don't think they're going to. For one main reason above all else. Not the sales data. Not the usual, again, gamers get outraged at something and then we all move on. Not that. The reason why I don't think they're going to backtrack is because they're already making moves that solidify what they're doing. Because Sony has already started retraining their employees at their Austria disc facility. Sony has many disc facilities around the world that make all their discs, whether it's CD, DVD, Blu-ray, for various many things, including the movies, of course. But their main disc plant for games, specifically the disc plant in North America and Europe, is in Austria. That's the plant that makes all of their North American and European disc games for PS4 and PS5 nowadays. They used to have one in the US. In fact, I have a couple of PS4 games that say manufactured in USA, but all my PS5 games say manufactured in Austria on the disc. They're all from that Austria plant. And that Austria plant right now, PlayStation disc production makes up about 50% of their output. But they're already redoing the whole thing to be surrounded around some kind of optical lens technology. I don't know, it's kind of irrelevant for this discussion, but they're already retraining their employees. They're already redoing the facility to be moved towards a different optical technology while still leaving a tiny bit of floor space for that reprint thing I mentioned at the beginning. So they're going from 50% to 10%. So they're only going to have 10% capacity left for disc games after 2028. And they're already moving towards that now. So there's probably going to be even less disc production, even for the games that will still come out on disc. So in the year or so before this all happens. So just the fact that they're already making those kind of big corporate moves with their disc plants, the ones that they still have, which is not that many at this point. I mean, Sony already discontinued their Blu-ray drives, their Blu-ray burners. They already discontinued their recordable media, CDRs, DVDRs, all that stuff. They discontinued those a few years ago. The only thing that they still make that's disc related is, they make PlayStation disc games in that Austria plant, at least for North America and Europe. I think the Japanese plant does their Japanese releases, but at least the releases that you and I buy in the West, they're all from that Austria plant nowadays. Again, there used to be a US plant that did it, but that US plant, they stopped disc production there for games in 2021, I believe. That's why none of the PS5 releases, at least that I have, say manufactured in USA on them. They all say manufactured in Austria. But, so that's their one plant, and they're already moving that plant away from discs. So unless they open up another plant or they redo one of their other plants, or They get some third party to do it. That's one thing I've seen people bring up. It's like, okay, maybe Sony doesn't want to make the discs anymore, but why don't they contract a third party disc manufacturer? Because they still exist, right? There are still disc making facilities out there, including for burnables. I mean, I have burnable discs myself. I'm one of the few people, one of the 5 people on planet Earth that actually has a Blu-ray burner and has CDRs and BDRs and DVDRs and actually uses them in the year of our Lord 2026. I know that's a rarity. I know that's a rarity. Most people have long abandoned burnable media, but I still think it has its use cases, and I absolutely still use it from time to time. And while other manufacturers still make those discs, Sony doesn't anymore. Sony, again, they killed off their burnable discs in like 2023, 2024, I believe is when they announced that, among other things. So, yeah, so I don't know. Point is, just because of what they've been doing over the last few years with other kinds of physical media anyway, in addition to what they're doing in the Austria plant right now, I just feel like they've made their decision, and it would take a lot for them to backtrack. Now, I'm not saying that they can't. Obviously, tomorrow they can announce, sorry guys, forget all that, going back to how it used to be, and they cancel the Austria thing. They keep the Austria plant as it is right now. They don't redo the floor space. They keep it at 50%, whatever. They could completely reverse all this. I'm not saying that they can't, but the signs sure as hell are not going in that direction, in my opinion. They've been moving away slowly. They've been moving away from disc manufacturing and disc burning and all that stuff for the last few years anyway. So this might just be the final nail in the coffin. Now, obviously, they still make discs for like Blu-rays, right? Sony Pictures Entertainment still puts out Blu-rays and stuff. In fact, they put out Blu-rays for other companies now. Like, for example, Disney doesn't make their own Blu-rays anymore. Sony makes them. So if you have a Disney Blu-ray release from like 2023 onward, if you look on the back of the box, it'll still say Disney and all that stuff, but at the bottom it'll say like distributed by Sony Pictures Entertainment, home distribution or whatever, or home entertainment. On like all the 2023 onward releases, yeah, they're actually manufactured by Sony and distributed by Sony, even though they're all Disney releases and they still have the Disney branding and everything. They don't have a Sony logo on them, but it will say distributed by Sony on the back of the box. That's kind of crazy, right? Like, that's kind of where we are with physical media now. I don't know. A kind of the state of physical media video is what I've wanted to do for the last couple of years. And maybe we'll do one at some point, but I kind of feel like I've already said what I need to say about it, at least in this video, as it pertains, of course, to the current situation with PlayStation. But I don't know, maybe we can talk broadly about the state of physical media when it comes to, again, burnable discs and movies and also stuff like the Switch 2 with the game key cards and all that stuff. We could probably do a whole video talking about just the state of physical media in general. Vinyl, cassette, CD, everything. We could talk about all of that in its own dedicated video, maybe sometime down the line. I have a thumbnail for it already made, so we just have to really record it, but I don't know, we'll see. But yeah, so point is, I don't think they're gonna push back. Sorry, I don't think they're gonna backtrack. Obviously, I hope they do. I really do hope they do, but I don't think it's gonna happen personally. But we can all hope. But I'm also not going to be naive and sit here and be like, oh yeah, they'll reverse course on it eventually. Just give it enough time and they'll eventually push and they'll eventually backtrack. I'm not so certain. I'm not so certain. So yeah, so I guess that's about it. That's about it. That is my thoughts on the current situation with Sony. And their decision to kill off discs. It really sucks. We all agree it really sucks. Even people that buy digitally agree it really sucks. However, I'm also not going to sit here and act like it's the end of the universe, because it's not. It's not the end of PlayStation even. The PS6 is going to have its struggles, but it's not going to be because of a disc drive. It's going to be because of the price. If it wasn't for the price, it would still sell just fine. But it's still important, I think, to support physical media. Again, I still buy physical media when I can. I'm going to buy Revelation. I'm going to buy Persona 4. I'm going to buy Persona 6 on disc on PS5, assuming they get a disc release. Obviously, all the first-party Switch 2 releases I'm going to buy for the rest of the generation are going to be on cartridge. And so on. But I don't know. Man. And again, as for whether or not I'm going to get a PS6 or not, well, I'm not going to get one at first, that's for sure, but that's mainly because of the price more than anything else. But even when the price comes down, I don't know. Maybe by that time I will have transitioned to PC. Fully. That's the other thing too, right? I haven't talked about this yet. Is of course PC, right? PC is all digital, and PC, obviously Steam is technically DRM, all that stuff, but people trust Valve more than any other gaming company. I would say they've kind of earned. They've earned credibility, even though obviously it's not perfect. Obviously, the whole thing with the Steam machine hasn't gone over well and all that stuff. I'm not saying they're perfect. They obviously aren't. No company is, all that stuff. But people trust them way more than they trust like Microsoft or Sony or Nintendo or Ubisoft or Square or any of the other big gaming companies. They trust them way more. It also helps that Valve has stated that, like, hey, if Steam ever shuts down, we'll make it so that all your games are DRM free, or something along those lines. Which, how much you want to believe him on that is up to you, but people certainly are giving him the benefit of the doubt. And even outside of Steam, we have GOG, which is a completely DRM free platform, right? And we also have Epic and Uplay, and sorry, not Uplay, Ubisoft Connect. They've renamed it a couple of times. We have multiple storefronts, some of those being DRM free, like GOG. And even the ones that aren't DRM free, like Steam, like people just like Steam way more as a platform than everyone else. And of course, cracks exist, so it's not like, even if there is DRM, that it's impossible to play it without needing to worry about any of that stuff, because people will find a way. So I guess here's the last statement I'll make here in regards to me and the PlayStation 6. I'm probably gonna move back to PC, at least for a time, right? I got into PC gaming initially in 2016. Then when the PS5 and Series X became a thing, I kind of moved away from it because the PS5 and Series X were good enough hardware-wise, and also because the discs. But if they're gonna be expensive, they're not gonna have discs. For Microsoft, that's easy, because their games are already on PC. I can already play Halo MCC and the Forzas and all that stuff on PC already. But as for Sony, though, right? Yes, there obviously was a brief period of time in the last few years where they did indeed have a bunch of their first-party games on PC. They had God of War and Horizon, Spider-Man and Sackboy and whatnot. They all got proper PC releases. And that's, but obviously that was controversial. Obviously people, that was a controversial move, like it was with Microsoft in 2016. And they've now backtracked on it. They've now backtracked on PC, and now they're going back in on console exclusivity. Which, however you feel about that is up to you. And again, that's a whole other conversation for another day. Is console exclusivity a good or a bad thing? That's a whole other conversation we could have another time. But that also kind of makes this situation a little more complicated, because if they were still putting out their games on PC, even if it was later, then that would give the PS6 less of a reason to be relevant for me. But since the games are now going to be only on the PS6 and PS5 for the rest of the generation again, it ironically makes the console more important, which normally I'd be fine with if it wasn't for the fact that now we're not going to have physical. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. I know that and let me make something crystal clear. PC has its benefits. PC is a great platform, but PC is also embroiled in its own set of... PC's been a mess for a while now. For the last couple of generations of graphics cards, people have been complaining ad nauseum about the prices and the VRAM and all that stuff. And that's been in the over-reliance on upscaling and all that other stuff. And again, that could be a whole video for another time and how I personally feel about it. Maybe we'll do it someday. But that also doesn't help, right? Right? I mean, AMD just announced like today or yesterday that like they're gonna put out like the 9050, and it's gonna be an 8 gig graphics card. And yes, it's the 9050. It's a low end card, but still 8 gigs. We've been the whole 8 gig thing has been litigated to death. We all know 8 gigs. It's had its time in the sun, but it's been time for a long time now, and they're still putting out 8 gig cards. And they're also going to have a 4 gig card for like system builders, which is like 8 gig is one thing, but at least you can play games on 8 gigs. But 4 gigs, like, ugh, it's not great. But again, that's been talked about to death, the whole VRAM thing, the pricing on graphics cards. That's been talked about to death. We don't need to get into that, especially not now, but point is, PC hardware has its issues right now too. Don't get me wrong; it's by no means rosy over in the PC land, and it hasn't been for a while. But even still, though, it's like, well, if I'm gonna have a digital library anyway, may as well be on the best platform for digital, which is PC. But we'll see. We'll see how this all pans out in the end. Maybe Sony will backtrack. Maybe they won't. Maybe by the time that the console actually comes out, people will be over it. We'll see. We'll see. But that is my thoughts on the situation. So what do you guys all feel about it? It's obviously been a month. Everyone's had their time to process and really think about how they feel about this, whether or not they really feel like the end of physical is a deal breaker for them. As I've already stated, for me, it's certainly a big hit to PlayStation, but it's not a complete deal breaker just yet. I need to really see how it all pans out and how I really feel about it when the moment actually comes. Because right now, it's not really over, right? We know it's going to be over, but it's not really over yet because we still have a year and a half in front of us. We still have a year and a half of physical games to come. It's not going to really hit until January 2028 happens. Or when they announce the PS6 and they say it doesn't have a disc drive. We're not really there yet. We're still at that point where there's a chance. There's a chance this could all work out, but we're not there yet. So we don't really truly know. So we'll see. But yeah, let me oh my god, I'm talking for too long. Oh my god. I've done multiple takes of this, by the way, in this recording session. This is like the third or fourth take I've done for this video. I think this one's actually going to come out. I think I'm pretty happy with this one, but yeah. Oh man, I've been talking for like last 3 or 4 hours trying to record this thing. Let me know what you guys think about this down below. Whether or not you guys, are you mad about the whole thing? Are you kind of indifferent to it? Does it not really affect you? Are you kind of whatever about it? Do you think it's the biggest deal ever? However you feel about it, good, bad, in the middle, however you feel about it, of any ways, I would very much like to see what you guys have to say down below. I'd be very interested. And yeah, long live physical media, but if physical media goes away, it's not the end of the universe. That's kind of my final take on the whole thing. So, thank you guys for watching, and with that being said, this is Logan59XP, and I'll see you guys next time.